Hey there, Substance fans. It's your host, Phil Marinello here. Life's been pretty crazy on my end. Dave has been having some tech issues. We considered maybe not having a release this week and just taking it off for the holidays as we get all our stuff together, but we didn't want to leave you with nothing. So, as a bonus here today, wanted to put in my conversation with Sarah Welch-Larson on her book, Becoming Alien, that covers the whole Alien franchise. We had her back on a few weeks ago for a substantive cinema on the first movie. My conversation here is on her book in the entire Alien series. We originally posted this just for our Patreon supporters on that feed. So many of you here are going to be able to listen to it for the first time. So we wanted to share this. If you're interested in hearing things like this and the unique stuff we are sharing for our supporters, you can catch us over on patreon.com/thesubstancepod. But without further ado, we did want to leave you with something. So here is that conversation with Sarah Welch-Larson. Enjoy. I almost launched into my regular thing, but this is our first, I believe, piece of content that is specifically for our supporters. So I don't know if Dave and I are going to get together and create a new special bit of music, or maybe I need to come up with a new intro. But thank you for being supporters of The Substance. This is a bonus. So I had a conversation on our main feed with Sarah Welch-Larson, Seeing, Believing, Bright Wall, Dark Room, Think Christian, many places, on the original 1979 Alien. It was a wonderful conversation. We closed out spooky season with it, and the movie is just incredible. It's an incredible movie. We had a wonderful conversation, and this is a bonus because Sarah wrote a book on the whole series, all 6 entries. So we decided to be like, well, we want to talk about that too. She wrote a book on it, but we didn't want to have it be like an hour and a half or 2 hour long episode on Alien with this tacked on. So this is its own conversation for supporters. Really, really wonderful book. You'll hear about it. It's always kind of fantastic when you are working on a project and just it all clicks in. And I was so excited to read the book and then talk with her about it, how she was approaching the series, trying to figure out how to frame it, and then came across this theological work that we get into in our conversation, that kind of perfectly mapped onto the series. And the series is such an interesting, the way the Alien series progresses from one film to the next is so unique that it was just kind of incredible when she found this theological framework that, as an analytical tool, mapped perfectly onto the series. So this is a very maybe niche episode, perhaps, for folks who are into theology and science fiction and film. But needless to say, that's me. So if that's you also, I think you're going to really enjoy this. You can find Becoming Alien a number of places online. It's out from Wipfenstock, WIPF. You can check that out. That will be in the show notes as well. And depending on when this comes out, somebody or somebody's, I think we're giving away 2 copies online. Some folks will have won this. Maybe we'll give them access to this too. We can figure that out as well. So here's my conversation with Sarah Welch-Larson on her book, Becoming Alien, in the whole Alien series. All right, Sarah Welch-Larson, welcome back. I got a little bonus content here for Becoming Alien. I really enjoyed our discussion on Alien. I'm not sure how long ago that was published, but for the supporters here, thank you for your time to kind of talk a little bit about your book project as a whole. I definitely want to get into these movies. So just kind of briefly, I'd like to hear about the theological, the process theology and feminist approach generally, and then we can hit how that applies to some of the different films in the series.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the original episode, we did talk about this a little bit, but Becoming Alien is an attempt to make sense of the Alien series kind of as a whole. It's a really fractured series of movies. There's 6 films. The first 4 were all directed by 4 different men, each with very different sensibilities.
Extremely.
Yeah, you get Jean-Pierre
Almost
Jeunet
different
and
genres, basically.
Oh, for sure. Like, I mean, Jean-Pierre Jeunet, James Cameron, David Fincher, and Ridley Scott are all very distinctive voices on their own. I can't really picture all 4 of them in the same room, and yet they kind of all are, just by nature of being involved with all of these alien movies. They were all really fraught productions. I don't think anybody really expected the end results of any of these movies to be what they were, whether that was as a success
That's a
or
good
as a
point.
failure. And so part of this was an attempt to kind of make sense of these movies thematically, because they are about the nature of evil and the reality of evil. And in order to do that, I did that through the lens of the theological work of Dr. Catherine Keller, who's a process theologian. So this idea of the universe kind of in a constant state of becoming. And she writes about that idea really compellingly, I think, in her work, Face of the Deep, A Theology of Becoming, which specifically focuses on the first 2 verses of Genesis. And I love that she's got a very substantial book of theology that really focuses primarily on those 2 verses, and then also a little bit on the book of Job, kind of as a meditation and a challenge to the idea of creation ex nihilo, like the idea of creation of something out of nothing. Her angle is that there was something before the world, and God put it all into relation with each other, which means that everything that is around us is both of a form that was ordained by God and in a relationship that was ordained by God. But because we live in a broken world, those relationships don't always work the way that we expect them to. And when we deny those relationships, and when we deny the inherent goodness and createdness of the world that God put into order, then that's sin. And that actually jives really well with the alien movies, I think, especially when we think about the alien movies as being an exploration of evil, not just with the monster of the alien, but with the existence of the company as a whole. Most models of evil involve evil as violence, or evil as being a sort of violation of a covenant, or evil as being disobedience to the rule of law or to God's law. And I think all of those models work to some extent, but I think that this idea of evil as being a denial of the inherent goodness and createdness of something else is one that really works well with this series, because so much of it is about the creation of systems that inherently harm human beings. Like when the company sends their crew to try to investigate the alien and then says, like, they're expendable, they're essentially human, like live bait for this thing. That's a denial of the inherent humanity of the crew of the Nostromo. And I think that in and of itself is almost more evil than whatever it is that the alien's doing, because the alien's doing what the alien knows how to do. And what the alien does is also deny your humanity. It literally covers your face. It turns you into a walking, like, creche for its young, and then it kills you pretty brutally, and then it treats you as food. But the alien is just acting kind of almost out of stimulus response, and the company is consciously choosing to do that. And
it's
I
like,
find
which
that
is more
chilling.
evil, the beast that is just terrifying and, like you said, will exploit you and rip you apart, but it's a beast. That's what it does, versus like civilized humanity going to enrich ourselves. We are going to basically do the same things socially and economically and spiritually.
To human beings, and then also to the alien as well. Like, the company wants to exploit the alien too, and they never really fully succeed at that, but they sure do try.
Yeah, no, that is a fascinating lens. And like you said, it's just seems kind of providential, almost like in your writing project, how perfect, especially for the first 4 films in the standard Alien series, like each movie goes about that in a completely different, unique way but it's still very tied. Like, It's completely unique, but also very much in relation to each other. And something that I think it was you that pointed out. I read the beginning of your book a while ago when you sent it to me.
Mm.
And I also maybe have a little bit of blank check in my head because I just rewatched Alien 3 and listened to their episodes, so I'm not sure. But I think you pointed out, I think it was you, that it's kind of for the first four, like part 2, 3, and 4, each kind of, if not undo, kind of what's the right word? Subvert.
Yes.
Each, like part 2, 3, and 4, each at their beginning and their inciting incidents subverts the finale of the previous movie.
Mm-hmm. They do. So Alien ends with Ripley, I guess, spoiler alert for a very old movie.
Major spoiler alert.
Yeah. Alien ends with Ripley safe in the shuttle, making her way home. Aliens.
She defeated the alien. She's safe. Everybody's great.
Yeah, she defeated it. It's gone. Aliens opens with her waking up 60 years after she thought she would. Everything she knows is gone. And oh no, there are colonists on board the moon that she had just left, and there are more aliens there. Aliens ends with her kind of finding and building a family for herself and also having defeated the aliens again, maybe once and for all. Alien 3 immediately opens with that family being brutally killed.
Oh,
and
that's one of the most
it's a gut punch.
I mean, child endangerment is a thing that is often exploited, occasionally done tastefully, but just Newt on the table dead with her like chest cavity like ripped open was just brutal.
It's tough. And I genuinely think that's one of the best scenes in that film because it is handled in a way that is honest about what's happening there and is honest about the emotional devastation that Ripley's going through. But it doesn't feel exploitative to me. I'd be curious to know if your mileage varies on that front.
No, I completely agree. It is, life is hard and life is rough. And David Fincher,
David Fincher is David Fincher.
Famously not a ray of sunshine. I think sometimes either he plays into it or people just like to label people and like, oh, he's the nihilist. Like, I don't think that is like perfectly true all the times. And I know all of our labels fall short sometimes, but I think that his reputation has kind of just become its own thing to a certain point, but it's in there. Like, it's a very nihilistic, dark, brutal movie with no hope. And the only hope, like, the hope of Newt immediately at the beginning ripped away. And then you're just kind of left with the stark, like, she spent the whole movie of Aliens protecting this surrogate daughter of hers. And then at the end, it's like, they're a family. Immediately ripped away, kind of there. And then the one ray of positivity, the one relationship that Ripley develops with
Charles Dance. Yeah.
My goodness.
He's so good in that movie.
He's incredible in that movie.
I love
Again,
him.
I talked about it. We talked about it in the previous episode. I always liked Alien 3 more than it seemed like the standard line was, oh, that's the bad one. And I'm like, you guys seen Alien Resurrection, right? Like,
yeah.
But just that it was like a failure. And I was like, I thought it was kind of cool. And then I watched it again because the blank check guys were. I was like, no, this movie rips. It is dark. It's probably not the one I'm going to put on most regularly, but it's a great movie.
It's fundamentally flawed, but I think those flaws kind of get turned into a strength because it was always going to be that dark and brutal to begin with. The ending,
the fight between the studios who wanted another Alien movie and David Fincher who just wanted to like go hardcore, like turn it up to 11 in the darkness. And they're like, well,
yeah,
you can do some of that, but then let's try to, and just the creative differences.
Yeah, well, the fact that they thought they could control him, I think, is because they underestimated him at his age. I'm pretty sure he was like 27 when he made Alien 3, which is wild.
Yeah, only done music videos before that.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, Ridley Scott had only made commercials and then one other film before he made Alien. And Alien is a masterpiece. It's a perfect movie.
Hardcore masterpiece, like 10 out of 10. Like when I watched it, I was like, man, is this Is this one of the best movies ever made?
It sure is, I think. And Alien 3 is not that. It's many things. It's not one of the best movies ever made. In places, I don't think it really succeeds at what it's trying to do, but it's trying to do and say something in a very substantial way that most movies aren't willing to go there. And I respect it for that. I don't love the final chase sequences, but I think the rest of the movie is coherent, at least in terms of it's trying to fulfill a very specific vision that not everybody really wanted to hear at the time. And I'm glad that it's getting that critical reevaluation.
Agreed.
I'm kind of dreading the critical reevaluation of Alien Resurrection, where everybody says Alien Resurrection is a good movie, actually, because I don't think that's the case.
I kind of love it, like kind of the sicko in the window. Like I kind of love it when bad movies start to get reappraised because I get to revisit them, and sometimes they're great. I'm always down for a reappraisal, but that was just such a bonkers movie.
Well, it's weird because I think Joss Whedon wrote it straight and Jean-Pierre Jeunet directed it like a farce, or vice versa. I'm genuinely not entirely sure. I like thinking about it. I don't like watching it. I don't have fun watching that movie, even though it's a very fun premise.
I know that I feel like maybe has that gotten a little bit of a reappraisal?
Oh yeah,
I loved it when it first came out, and then everybody's like, "You should hate it," and I was like, "Why though?" I liked it quite a bit.
I think Prometheus is kind of a mess, but it's a gorgeous mess.
It is. That was one of. I think that was one of the. I mean, I saw a lot of the silly kids movies, but I think that was my first 3D IMAX movie where the 3D was like an added layer of immersion versus, like, I think other than Avatar, that was like my second like good 3D movie.
Ridley Scott and James Cameron, they know what they're doing and they know how to put a good image on the screen. Yeah, I mean, Prometheus is just the cinematography, the design, the place setting, the fact that they were able to do a lot of practical outdoors shoots for some of those environments
on such a scale.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And the score is one of my all-time favorite movie scores. I love that score. Do I fully get what he's trying to do with that movie? In a vacuum, no, I don't. But if you bring Alien Covenant into it, I feel like Alien Covenant retroactively clarifies a lot of what's going on in not just Prometheus, but what's happening in all of the other Alien movies. And I'm as sad as I am that Alien didn't turn into one of those franchises where you get a great director in and they make an incredible movie and then they're done and they get out and they're gone and then you move on to the next director. I am glad that Ridley Scott got the chance to have kind of the final word, at least up until this point. With
I mean,
Prometheus
they're gonna make
Covenant.
More.
Oh, they are. They already have. There's another one in the can.
I like him a lot.
I have only seen Fede Alvarez's Evil Dead movie. I don't love it. I think it takes itself a little bit too seriously, and I feel like I needed a little bit more of that Sam Raimi energy to get injected into that movie. But my professional opinion about the Fede Alvarez Alien movie, having not seen it yet, is that it is going to be sick nasty. And
which I'm pumped for. So
yeah, it'll be fun. Hopefully.
I love Sam Raimi, and this is not a Sam Raimi podcast, but I mean, I respect a lot when somebody comes into an existing property that Sam Raimi made 3 and it had been forever. I respect that. I'm not going to do an impression. I'm going to do my own thing. And I thought his own thing was brutal and really entertaining. And I really enjoyed, was it the Don't Breathe? I thought that was very good too.
I have not seen Don't Breathe.
Surprisingly effective and a little bit substantive as well.
Yeah, good for him. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the case for a lot of horror movies. I know you talked to Josh Larson about Fear Not. I'm not going to retread that territory, but I'm in full agreement with him about how horror movies can be really uniquely illuminating and edifying, even when they're out there to scare us.
This is definitely, especially for Substance listeners, this is not a full-throated endorsement, but the first Don't Breathe movie has one of the most unsettling and gnarly images in a modern horror movie. And I kind of like, it's revolting and kind of incredible and amazing. And like, if you see it in a big room full of people, like I couldn't believe it. Kind of incredible.
I'll have to check it out. That's one that I haven't
gnarly.
seen. I don't know that I can sucker very many people into watching it, but if I get the chance, I'll round up a few folks.
It's much more thriller than horror.
Gotcha.
If that helps.
Okay. Yeah.
Anyway, so I would love to hear your lens, because each chapter has its own lens that you're looking through these movies. I'm super curious to hear about Covenant, and don't worry about spoilers with me because I haven't seen it. Like, what's your pitch for? I didn't even read your chapter because I was like, I want to talk to her about it, and I was going to try to watch the movie before this. It's just had a heck of a week.
So hopefully you'll get the chance to see it soon. I will try to avoid spoilers. I tend to be like, I don't want to be spoiler averse. I think that if a movie is truly good, even if you spoil it, it'll still be good because it's about how it's doing it. But I'll try to avoid that to a certain extent. So chapter by chapter, I kind of build on this idea of evil as being, the denial of interrelations. So Alien is just the discovery that evil is out there. It exists. What are you going to do? Aliens is kind of a building on that in terms of evil's out there and it persists. So how are you going to react? Are you going to be someone who reacts rationally and thoughtfully about evil, or are you just going to react in a panic? And then what is the course of action that you need to take when evil is out there and is continuing to come for you? Alien 3 kind of flips that again and says, okay, you have engaged and it's still here. How do you live with the reality that evil is here and you cannot fix it? Do you continue to try to fight it, or do you just give up? Alien 3, I think, is also probably like the most explicitly spiritual out of all of the Alien movies. So
Absolutely.
Ripley crash lands on a penal colony full of convicted rapists and murderers. And they are the last remnant of this prison planet that has been shut down some years beforehand. And they've decided to stay because they have decided that they don't deserve to be reintegrated into society. Their sins are too great, so they're going to live out the rest of their lives in essentially monkish penance. And they have convinced themselves so much that they don't deserve to be among humanity that they treat themselves as though they are not human anymore either. It's the reality that if you live within this level of sin, you're not going to know how to relate to other people anymore. And when Ripley joins this colony unwillingly, she reminds these men of their humanity on top of the fact that they're men and she's a woman. And so the movie is both very explicit about a woman's place in a man's world. And then it is also very explicit about the reality of what happens when you deny the humanity of yourself and other people. And I think it's a reclamation of that. Alien Resurrection kind of flips the script a little bit because it focuses on another aspect of the Alien movies that doesn't really get talked about all that much, especially when you're talking about the first three. And that's the fact that humanity has created androids and they are also living beings. They're not human. Maybe they're more human than human if you want to co-opt Blade Runner a little bit. And some people will argue that Blade Runner and Alien happen in the same universe. I don't buy it. It's all extra textual. But
I don't
anyway,
like that either.
I'm not crazy about it.
It's sort of fun for like a conversation with your buds, but no, don't do that.
Yeah. I mean, Ridley Scott does nod to that a little bit in Alien Covenant. I don't know if that's a selling point or not, but it is intriguing.
Not a selling point, but I am excited to see it.
Yeah, he does it in some interesting ways, I think. So Alien Resurrection says, okay, cool. We're fallen, broken people, and there are other fallen, broken people who come from us. How do we nurture them and give them the ability to live out to the best of their potential? In this case, it's in the form of the androids. And I think the androids are really the turning point of the series in a really fascinating and interesting way, because once you finish Alien Resurrection, Ripley manages to escape the cycle of evil.
Remind me, Resurrection. Was
Oh,
that
yeah.
androids and clones, or are they kind of like android clone hybrids?
So Ripley is a clone of herself, functionally. Sigourney Weaver is
Okay,
playing a
yes.
version of Ripley because Ripley dies at the end of Alien 3.
Yeah,
Again,
so like
spoilers, I suppose.
a humanoid, like she's all human in Resurrection.
She is part alien, actually. So her DNA is
Oh
spliced
yes,
with
yes,
alien
yes,
DNA. So
yes.
she's got the
Okay,
pointy
yes.
fingernails. She's got slightly acidic blood. She has the ability to shoot hoops from half court from behind.
Very cartoony stuff.
Very cartoony stuff, although she did sink that shot in person,
Oh,
which is pretty incredible. Ron Perlman just about broke character when he saw it happen, too. But there's also androids. So Winona Ryder is in Alien Resurrection as another one of Alien's secret android characters, somebody who we're introduced to them. We think they're human. Turns out they're not. And everybody around her, the moment that it's revealed that Call, Winona Ryder's character, isn't human, everybody immediately starts referring to her as an it. They start dehumanizing her. They start treating her as not a person. And that's a fundamental turning point for the series, I think, because our sympathies are very firmly on the side of the android at this point. Once the aliens are defeated for the umpteenth time and Ripley and Call fly away to Earth, we don't really ever see them again. We're kind of led to believe that they've found some sort of healing.
mercifully, they weren't brought into Prometheus.
No, Prometheus is kind of a prequel.
It is a prequel.
I find it fascinating because it does turn the lens back on an unexplored corner up until that point of the Alien series, which is, where did the aliens come from? What's the origin of this evil? And so Ridley Scott returns to the series. He says, I'm not really interested in exploring the alien per se. I'm much more interested in the space jockey that we see at the very beginning of the first Alien movie. This creature with its chest burst out, that's carrying a bunch of alien eggs in its hold. Ridley Scott wanted to know more about the origin of this creature and whether or not it was connected to the alien. So he made a movie exploring that. And in so doing, he kind of brings in additional questions about what people actually believe versus what they choose to believe and what they choose to turn away from and to ignore. And in this case, that's more androids. So you have Michael Fassbender playing the character of David.
Incredible performance.
It's such a good performance. And he's kind of cast aside, and he's also a very devious character, and you're not really entirely sure what he's up to, but you know that he's not trustworthy. And he's working for half of the Wayland half of Wayland-Yutani, which is the company that kind of haunts all of these movies. The movie of Prometheus, the movie Prometheus is one that I find kind of dissatisfying because it does feel a little bit messy. And
it asks a lot. Like, I like question asking.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to give me all the answers.
Well, and that's the thing is, I don't think he's answering all of the questions from Alien proper. Like, the planet is different and the location is different, and not everything happens exactly the way that, like, you don't find the exact same set that we find
Agreed.
at the beginning of Alien. And I love that there's kind of a mismatch between what's happening there.
I do too. I don't like it when these, even when they're well done, like the whole like legacy sequel compulsion to be like, here's this object or this event that we're gonna like backdoor tie right into, and it's like, okay, like cool, here's how that character got that item or that scar or that whatever, and it's like, that's good for like 1 second of an aha moment and then it's gone. Or like, that's not like crazy rewatchable. That's not like deep or interesting often. You
have to do something with the feeling of recognition, and I think so often those moments they're just there to be recognized, and then that's it. Which is one of the things that I find so fascinating about Alien Covenant as a sequel to Prometheus, because the series kind of both goes off in a completely different direction, and then also Alien Covenant sort of serves as the ligaments that hold this entire series together. It's what's holding the tissue on the bone. It is a summation of all of the themes of all of the Alien movies before it. It
Okay.
retroactively makes Prometheus more of an alien movie because I think everybody agrees it doesn't really feel too much like an alien movie. You barely even
No.
see the
I like it
alien.
as an experience, and I'm glad that Ridley Scott got a lot of money to mess around and make beautiful images. But yeah, like I didn't think too deeply about it.
Hmm.
I was just
And
like, I enjoyed that sensory experience, and I rewatched it a few times, and I'm like, he makes a good scene, but then I'm like, what the heck was that though? Actually,
yeah. And I think Covenant serves to make a little bit more sense about what the heck was that and makes all of the underlying story of Prometheus less about humanity because Prometheus is essentially a creation myth about humanity and our origins within the
well,
universe.
yeah, it starts exactly with like this universe's creation myth.
Hmm. It does. And then Alien Covenant takes that and says, okay, cool, we've talked about humanity. We've done that enough. Let's focus on the androids. And so Alien Covenant,
Yeah,
both.
all I know about it is that you see the aliens a lot more, and that Michael Fassbender's character is much more important. That's pretty much all I know.
Oh, you're in for a treat. Michael Fassbender gets to play more than one role, and that's all I'm going to say about that level.
Oh, I like that. I
But
didn't
it
know
was a
that. That's
selling point for me
exciting.
personally. It kind of distills all of Aliens themes in some interesting ways, and also Alien Covenant is Alien as Frankenstein, like specifically
Okay,
Mary
I like
Shelley's
that.
Frankenstein, wrapped up in an art history 101 kind of skin. So you get a lot of allusions to famous paintings about
Yes, I have
death and
seen the
mortality.
different paintings. Am
Hmm.
I wrong? Is it also a little bit funny?
Yes, it is a little bit funny, but very dark humor and very few and far between.
Okay,
Yeah. But there are moments that are laugh out loud funny, depending on how sick your sense of humor is.
sure. But I
Um,
mean, I don't remember Resurrection hardly at all.
mhm.
And like, there are some moments from Aliens that have just kind of become cultural jokes as references, but like, you don't really think of chuckles for any of the Alien movies, really.
Yeah, Aliens, I think, is the one that is the most cohesively funny or
Like
joyful or
light,
more willing
sort
to
of.
tell a joke that lands. Alien
Yeah.
Resurrection tries to do that, and it is a Alien Resurrection is a sick joke of a movie. So much so that I actually compared it
Put that on the
to.
poster. Sarah Welch-Larson. Alien Resurrection is a sick joke of a movie.
It sure is. It is Alien sicko mode, but it's also Alien as a farce, and that kind of jives with Catherine Keller's. Just to bring it back full circle, it jives with her reading of the Book of Job as being a farce telling of Genesis, and so Alien Resurrection is kind of that farce telling of Alien in a way that kind of flips everything over and turns it into a joke and lets you look at it in a slightly different light. So horror lets us look at real world problems in a different light. Comedy gives us the opportunity to do that. When you combine those two, it leads to some
I
interesting
do love a
results.
good horror comedy. Well, I'm super excited about Covenant. This is very. Forgive me if this is kind of a basic, silly thing. Do you have like maybe like top three? Like you don't have to rank them all, but like what are your favorites? How do you personally like enjoyment quality wise? How do you kind of see the movies?
Okay, so if you ask me this question on any given day, it's going to change because that's just the
Is
nature
number
of it.
one always number one, or does that change too?
That does change. Sometimes
Nice.
it's
I
Alien
like that.
Covenant. Sometimes it's Alien 3.
What?
Sometimes it's Aliens. I think the one that I like watching the least is Alien Resurrection, but that's also the one that I like thinking about the most because it's just so weird. So there's a lot of different ways
Wow.
to think about it. As a cohesive whole, I mean,
Sometimes Covenant is your favorite.
sometimes Covenant is my favorite.
That
Yeah.
is, I mean, I'm already excited to see it, but that's one of my buddies shares his digital library with me, and that's been calling my name for a little while.
Oh yeah, you should check it out this spooky season for sure. Because I'll be curious to know if you share my sentiment on that. There are quite a lot of detractors for Alien Covenant, but quite a lot of us who do like it are very vocal about it. So join us, join our numbers.
I'm very excited, and even if I don't think it's as good, like I know it's going to be beautifully made because Ridley Scott can almost not make a bad movie.
Yeah,
He's got a few.
It's beautiful, and also a good score. There's some really interesting actors in it as well. So
Danny McBride's in that one, right?
Danny McBride and Amy Seimetz are both in it, and I love.
Is Danny McBride, or is he more acting?
More acting, but that's almost more unsettling. Somebody else made this comparison on Letterboxd. Like, you don't put Danny McBride in a movie and then not have him explode. And this movie kind of does that, which feels like a violation of, like, I don't know, maybe it's Chekhov's law of Danny McBride. You got to have this guy go bonkers at some point, and he doesn't really do that. And
I can't wait.
It's great. It's a genuinely great movie, and I love it. It's mean. It's probably the meanest out of all of the Alien movies. So, like,
meaner than Alien 3?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah.
This sounds like a fascinating movie.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's lit like a Goya painting. And you get some really good art world references in there that are just, here's something additional to sprinkle in.
I feel like I've seen Goya mentioned in more than a few Letterboxd reviews.
Probably one of those was mine, because I talk about that all the time.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
It's not been out that long, and you've had it logged several times.
Oh, yeah. It came out in summer 2017, May 2017.
That was one I saw Prometheus in the theaters. And then when Covenant came out, I was just, the way they sold it, like, I try not to watch a lot of trailers, but I mean, I remember, like, the giant xenomorph on the ship, just like in broad daylight. I was like, okay, like, I do like that you're getting more. Like, Prometheus was a really cool art piece or whatever, but it was pretty light on aliens.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that they're like, we want to let you know that there's going to be more alien action in this. But it was almost, I don't want a movie that's like, this movie is made based on your consumer reactions. Like, I want it to be whatever it wants to be.
And I think that might have been some of the studio notes for sure. I mean, the trailer for Alien Covenant is cut almost exactly the same way as the original 70s trailer for Alien, which I find kind of fascinating.
Ooh.
But one of the other ways that they sold it was they did, like, train car wraps on the CTA, on Chicago's L system. So this was when I was commuting into the Loop for work every single day. And sometimes I would end up on the CTA car that had been wrapped completely in black. And then on the inside, there would be a gigantic alien head on the doors. And then the words "run" and "hide" just printed everywhere. It was an incredible experience. And then they left that wrapping on that car for another 9 months after the movie came out. So every once in a while, I would just see the Alien Covenant train car. And if people walked onto that train and weren't expecting it, you could see someone walk onto the train car on their phone, and they would look up and look around and then get right back off because they weren't.
They're clocking. They're like, I don't know what this is. This is.
Yeah, no xenomorphs on your weekly commute. You've got enough monsters to deal with at work.
Well, I'm excited. Listen, is your book primarily sold online through the big places, or where can folks find your book?
People can find it in all of the usual suspects. So, Barnes & Noble, if you're a Barnes & Noble person, the typical the typical place if you're on online. You can buy it off bookshop.org, or you can buy it directly from Whiffenstock, and I can send you the link for that. Matt Zoller Seitz, the critic, also has his own bookstore, and I believe there may still be some signed copies of my book available through there as well.
There were the last time I checked, and I was like, oh man, Sarah getting in there. That's very cool.
He was a really wonderful supporter of the book in the early stages as well, which was very kind of him. So he didn't need to do that, and he appreciated it enough to offer it on his bookstore, and I'm really grateful for that. So
is he, and feel free, we can cut this if you want, is he a person of faith?
He is not, no. And he's open about that. But he is someone who is intrigued by art that is about faith. And so that is something that he's very willing and open to engaging with. So I actually had the opportunity to do an event with him this past May in New York. He was doing a screening of Aliens for Mother's Day. And
I love that. I saw that. I was like, man, that looks like a blast.
It was. And he was kind enough to invite me to join him for that. We had a conversation about the movie afterwards, and then a book signing. And he was very interested in talking about the faith aspects of all of the Alien movies, which was a really good conversation. And I'm just really glad that I had the opportunity to have it.
Well, I'm always encouraged when it's like Kevin, yourself, Josh, like folks who are thoughtful people.
Mhm.
Growing up in the church, you're sometimes told that, like, oh, like the world doesn't like people of faith. And it's like, well, maybe they don't like obnoxious and self-righteous people. Like if you're thoughtful and kind and like you're saying things that like have meaning and you care about your fellow person, then like there are a lot of people of faith in the arts who do very well.
They do, yeah. So I feel fortunate that I'm able to join in on that conversation.
Well, I'm excited to finish your book after I rewatch some of the ones I haven't seen in a while or ever. I can't wait for Covenant now.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm glad.
I'll shoot you my review sometime when I see it. It's one that's been on my watch list for a very long time.
Excellent. You'll definitely have to let me know what you think.
Well, Sarah, thank you for coming again for this conversation. I hope that people check out these movies, especially any of the entries they haven't seen, and check out your book and start some good conversations. I love it when good art starts good conversations.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
So that was myself and Sarah Welch-Larson on Alien. Love the movies. Really enjoyed her book. Still, as of this recording, I sat down one night, or I didn't sit down, actually. I was doing some chores. I went to go hit play on Alien Covenant, and I was just, for a first watch for something where I just had a really enjoyable conversation, kind of in depth on it, I didn't want to like give it half my attention. So as of now, I'm still only 5 out of 6 on the Alien movies, but I'm looking forward to remedying that hopefully very soon. So hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, if you want to purchase Sarah's book, information is in the show notes. Go check out her Seeing and Believing newsletter. So yeah, be sure to check out Sarah and Kevin's Seeing and Believing newsletter now. And if the podcast is something you haven't really listened to very much, I believe they got 400 episodes, really great content, pretty much evergreen. If any of those movies are things you're interested or titles you are interested in checking out, really, really great film criticism and commentary from them there. So check out Seeing and Believing, check out her book. And if you're here and you're a supporter, let us know what you'd be interested on us covering in future substantive cinema or other sorts of episodes. You can do that by sending an email or a voice note to thesubstancepod@gmail.com. Yeah, send us an email or a voice note, and if it makes sense, we'll get it on the show for you guys. So have a wonderful day. Thanks for being supporters, and we will see you next time on the Substance bonus feed.